time I'd like to make a video about Virgil Armstrong, a person who worked for the intelligence service of the United States Army for 8 years. He also speaks on the so-called Hanubu people, the so-called Imperial Germans. First, we will check out in a short introduction on a web page. This is from lighttechnology.com. Armstrong, Virgil Armstrong. Virgil Armstrong, better known as Posty throughout the world, is a retired Army intelligence officer who served 8 years with the country's top intelligence agency and 10 years as one of the original Green Berets. As an Army intelligence officer, he was a participant in USA's first known capture of a UFO, Project Grudge, at Sands Proving Grounds, New Mexico in 1948. As an outgrowth of this incident, Virgil instigated his own research effort to study and uncover further evidence of the UFO phenomenon, developing telepathic abilities to communicate with higher intelligence. The Armstrong Report, a messenger of humankind's purpose on the planet, Virgil has traveled to the United States, sharing his knowledge of the current purification of Earth and role of the Space Brotherhood in the raising of the planet into the fourth dimensional consciousness. In concert with this effort, he has written Citizen Alert, a book that provides the populace with low-profile alternatives for survival in the turbulent times ahead. This is a task that the government has failed to perform, excluding the citizenry in its plans to protect itself in the event of a national emergency. Well, Armstrong also portrays raising in frequency, well, the so-called dimensional jump of Earth into a higher frequency-based dimension. And it also states a so-called purification, where all those that cannot make it into the New Age will die off. This is the so-called 3 days of total darkness. It's interesting to know that Virgil Armstrong, who studied alternative or conspiratorial history online, came to the same insight and conclusion that I came into. This is the official website of Virgil Armstrong. He has a web presence online. And that is what he says. Seeds of consciousness, thought-form guidelines are only defense. It is time to remember who and what you are. Perhaps we are gods in amnesia, living in the world of illusion. Discover how we can use thought forms to overcome the challenges of the new millennium. What Virgil Armstrong means with thought forms is that your brain, your thinking, generates thought forms in the other world. And this actually radiates from your mind at a certain frequency. It's called so-called ether physics, intertwined with the higher dimensional build-up of this universe. According to the Vedas, the frequency-based universe has 14 dimensions, 7 light-oriented dimensions and 7 dark-oriented dimensions, whereas the 7 dark-oriented dimensions are only there for entities that ignore or deny the existence of the Creator. God Himself allows the freedom to even deny His existence. So we have a frequency-based universe, and this is what Virgil Armstrong is talking about, that in this 14-dimensional frequency-based universe we have a 14-dimensional body as well, or a higher dimensional body. We have a soul, we have a etheric body, and outside of your body, if you induce astral projection or OBEs, you can generate what you can create. You can think of something and it materializes in front of your hands. I did this once while outside of my body. I thought of something and it materialized as I was thinking of it. So thinking is actually creating. It's a creationary process. Now in the following we will check out a short interview about Virgil Armstrong, where he depicts the so-called Hanubu people and even ET people who come from the Taurus star system. And he says that from the Taurus star system, or the eye of the Taurus, there's practically an energy ray hitting our Earth in Germany, and that this ray raises the frequency of the Germans, and hence they are more productive, more ingenious, more creative, because Germany has contributed so much technology to the modern era. It is so many things: the car, the computer. They're philosophers, they're thinkers. The Germans are practically blessed with this rays of the black sun, I believe it's the rays of the black sun from the center of our galaxy that has a focal point in Germany, and that's why it is practically such a creative folk, the Germans. I think this has to do with the fact that they are also the chosen people on Earth to make the reality of the kingdom of heaven on Earth a reality. Nevertheless, we'll check out a short part of the interview. The full interview is the link below. Just check out the full interview if you want to. It's really interesting. I'll put a short part in between where he talks about the so-called Hanabu people.
And of course, the problem today is, if you see a UFO, who does it belong to? Is it Russian? Is it American? Is it extraterrestrial? Is it the Hanabu people? Or
the Hanabu, that's German.
Germans, yeah, they're in Antarctica, and they're good.
Yeah.
They're good people. I've had them come to my lectures in Austria and then tell my hostess or whoever's in charge, tell Virgil we were here and we like what he's saying. But it's interesting.
Germans?
Yeah.
That live on the Antarctica.
Yes, right. And I wrote an article about Hitler a couple of years ago. It's quite popular. In fact, I think I'll give it to Werner in Munchen when I get down there and have it there for distribution to the people.
I would be interested in that, yes.
Yeah, you'd be interested in that article. Hitler, of course, did not die in the bunker, as everybody said. You know, he escaped.
It was a double?
Well, double, yeah. But he, to the dental plate, they'd identified him as not being Hitler.
Okay.
Hitler,
he did go to the South Pole?
No, he didn't. He and Eva went to Argentina, Buenos Aires.
Yes.
And he lived out his life there, he and Eva. And Hitler lived to be 98 years old.
So he died just like in the 80s or something?
He died, I don't know how he died, but I think just old age, really. Dr. Hertak and I were having breakfast in Zurich, Switzerland, and he said to me, he said, Virgil, he said, the international intelligence community is saying that Hitler was taken off with the UFO. Do you know anything about that? And of course, I was eating breakfast. I wasn't thinking, you know. And I said, no, I don't know anything about it. And then Jim got a phone call, and he got up and left. And the minute he left, I said, oh, my God, it's right on. Hitler had died, and then the Hanabu people, who are in Antarctica, came and got him and buried he and Eva there, you know.
Okay, now we have aliens that crashed in America. Then we have German flying saucers, so
yeah, the Hanabu.
But they existed before the crashes, and so the source for Earth's flying saucers are not the crashes in America and Roswell. And
no, those were extraterrestrial, and they weren't German.
Did Germans have contacts with outer space people?
Yes, they did. Actually, before the United States. In 1929, the Germans were already on the moon.
1929.
1929, Professor Phillips.
What kind of... Professor Phillips?
Phillips, yeah. And the Third Reich tried to enlist him to build UFOs so they could win the war, but he said, no. And but the Germans, and I wrote an article about that. What's in that article about Hitler? Why is a small country the size of Germany so special and so strong, and everybody's afraid of them, you know? They're smaller than some of the states in the United States.
True.
And yet they have such a powerful economy. They have a powerful, if they wanted to, a war machine, as they said in the Second World War. They're great scientists, they're great philosophers, they're great mathematicians and what have you. There's a wellspring of them.
Germans don't think of themselves like that. They don't think positive of them.
But when you read history, there it is. It's there.
Sure.
Now the reason for that is that they are overlighted by a special energy. And this special energy comes through a glitch in the solar system grid system. There's a glitch there's a hole in it, you see. So that this hole is directly in line with a constellation called Taurus. And the brightest star of the constellation Taurus is Aldebaran. And Aldebaran beams directly into Germany, and of course gives them the great strength and resources and the things that they are, makes them what they are really, so that they're different from any other nation in the world, and they are special peoples. And
what they don't see, or we don't see that like
well,
that, but what probably our history is
well,
written from the Americans and the victors.
Yeah, the victors always write history. They have to make somebody bad. They made the Germans bad. But the Germans are no worse than the British, the Americans, and others. They did terrible things also, you know.
That's a hot topic.
That's part, sure it is, but it's part of war,
yeah.
You know, unfortunately.
So the Germans had contact with the Aldebaran people, is that right? So
well, with the energy, yes. And, there were two societies back then, the Virgil Society and the Tully Society, and they, of course, were in touch with the Aldebaran energies, and they gave Hitler, along with Victor Schauber, he, of course, was a genius himself. And so Hitler, it was interesting, Hitler said, I shall win the war. And he said, I have a secret weapon. And the Allies laughed at him. They thought it was the B-2 rocket.
Yeah.
And the B-2 rocket on the nose cone, it should have been written, to whom it may concern, because it had never hit the target, you know. But psychologically, it was
not
really,
the secret weapon.
No, but it was also very deadly, because you never knew where it was going to hit, you know. But indeed, American intelligence found out that Hitler did have a secret weapon, and that was the Haunebu. And he built the
It was a weapon, or just a
yeah, it's a UFO, flying saucer.
It's not a weapon.
The second one was, yes. The second one, he got up and flying. Now, the first one could do, pardon me, 1,200 miles per hour. That's, about 15 km. The second one would do 3,000, and the third one coming off the drawing board was capable of 8,000 miles per hour. Now, the second one had armament, which was laser. It was capable of penetrating 4 inches of armor. Now, that would have wiped out the sea vessels, you know, and also the tanks and what have you. And so the Allied powers really got frantic at that point in time and said, we have to stop him. We have to win the war. Quick. Consequently, you people suffered so much from the bombings and what have you. But the idea, of course, was to eliminate the Third Reich so they wouldn't win the war. And so it's history. It was a tragic thing. And, of course, thank God I wasn't here. I was fighting over in Asia at that time and against the Chinese communists and the Japanese.
You wouldn't have liked to fight against the Germans?
No, I wouldn't, no.
Okay, now we said the Germans were on the moon. So that's a topic I have dealt a lot with in a movie I've...
The Armstrong Report can be bought on Amazon.com. It's written by Virgil Armstrong. In it, he describes a so-called transformational shift, or a consciousness transformation of the planet Earth, and also of some type of purification. So what Virgil Armstrong actually states is that there will be a consciousness or a dimensional shift of the Earth, that there will be some type of purification also in the future, and that in this purification many people who are not of the right spirit or the spiritual level will practically have to leave their bodies behind and be reborn somewhere else. That he talks of the Haunebu people. I think he also knows of the possibility of caves, or the so-called hollow earth. And he also talks of the star system Taurus, the so-called Aldebaran system, Aldebaran planet, and the Taurus star system, the so-called Nordic aliens, or Aldebaraners. And he talks, of course, over the aliens visiting the Americans, and of course much more. Yeah, he has a deep insight in a lot of knowledge, even on the so-called UFO moon landings. I suggest you watch the interview. I just wanted to make a short video detailing his perspective, that he also confirms my perspective. At the end of your research, you come to the same insight, and the more you know about thought forms, energy wave forms, the more you know about the reality of how everything is formed and works, then you're consciously aware of what they're actually doing to the populace. Cheers.